Hey everyone, I'm Alex Rockwell. This is the fifth installment in a series of talks with my former teacher, James Piorkowski, on his tools for productive practicing, a collection of strategies and techniques you can apply in your practice and study of your instrument to ensure that you are solving problems and achieving your goals, instead of just floundering around aimlessly. You can download a PDF of the full list of tools on Jim's website, link in the description. Let's get back into it. The next one we have is make it more difficult.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is, a lot of these tools overlap. So we were talking about rhythmic patterns, right? Like, again, we go back to the Brouwer 6. And if we do that one pattern with the triplets, which I screwed up, with that triplet pattern, that's a little trickier than, so it's more difficult.
Right.
Or if you play something, try it faster than what you're going to eventually perform it at. You're making it more difficult. Now you pull it back, and it seems easier. And little speed bursts, as Scott Tennant calls them. So. Appropriately so, as we're doing here, these little speed bursts, they're tricky, conceptually, physically, but you're challenging yourself with tempo or rhythms, and then when you release into what you're eventually going to be playing, it's just simpler. So that one is very integrated into a lot of the things we're talking about.
Yeah, it's not really its own specific approach necessarily. There's a lot of ways to do it. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
My first classical guitar teacher, Micah Scoville, he had a saying, if you only practice slow, you'll only ever play slow. If you only ever practice fast, you'll only ever play sloppy. And if you can only play slow, you're Eric Clapton. But of course, like the point is, you have to do both, right?
Right.
And it's something Stanley used to say. You should have like this is. I guess this is sort of going back to the stretch time practice a little bit, but you should have like maybe like 4 practice tempos, and something that's maybe like 3/4 speed. Something that's maybe a click or two under your like maybe 10% under performance tempo, your performance tempo, and then something that's like faster than performance tempo.
Pushing your limits.
Yeah, and I think that's really good because as I tell my students a lot, do you want your performance tempo to be the absolute fastest you can play the piece? Right?
Good point.
I mean, it's that's not ideal, and I think, with making it more difficult, right?
Right.
Playing something faster than you would realistically perform it, and being able to like get it really good at that tempo, really good and consistent, it's giving you headroom.
Right. And what you have to also then, this practicing like 2 notches under performance tempo is also really valuable because you want to know what that is. When you go on stage, when we're on stage and the lights are on us and eyeballs are on us, and there's no one else on stage but the guitar and me or guitar and you, we can get a little adrenaline rush. Things are flowing a little faster inside our head. And our perception of tempo can be altered. What we think is tempo might be too fast because everything is speeding up within us. So I like the idea of thinking, I'm going to shave 5% off of what I think this tempo should be right now. And most likely I'll be right in the sweet spot.
Yep. Aim slower. Yeah.
A little bit under what we think it should be.
A little.
At least for the first couple of pieces in the recital, because you're just getting your feet firmly on the ground on that stage,
You haven't like settled in yet. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's good. So to have those different tempo markings under your belt is really valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the whole thing about aiming a tad slower than what feels like the right tempo. Uh,
Hmm.
I have carried that with me forever. I tell my students that all the time, especially when we do. So, at Fredonia, we had a class recital seminar, which we called RecSem, and which was it happened every week, right? It was every week.
Hmm. That's
Yeah.
right. Every Tuesday at 5 for many years.
Yeah. We would, this was the time for all of the guitar students. You all get together in the same space and you basically just take turns playing the music you're working on for each other, and it's whatever state of completion it's at.
Hmm.
It's
Even
there's
if it's
always
only the A section, could
right.
be, yeah,
It doesn't even
partial.
have to be the whole thing. Yeah,
That's right.
I get this. This comes up later in the list, but playing for others. But you always used to tell us after we played, aim a little slower. And so I do a thing with my students now. We do the same kind of thing, but monthly, because everyone is an adult with a job and kids, and So I always tell them that there. I tell them aim a little bit slower, like 5% under.
Yeah.
Before you start, because you see it so much. I mean, I know you've seen it many times too, right? They go up to play and they say, "Hi, my name is so and so, and I'm going to play this piece by this composer, downbeat," and
Right, right.
and they don't like settle in and like cue up the music in their head before they start.
Right. Or prepare themselves. Nice exhalation, get rid of the tension.
Yeah, all these things.
All
Yeah,
that stuff. Quiet yourself down.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, I see my students do that, and I'm like, whoa, 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 chill out, dude, come on, you know, and just take a sec, like 5 seconds, to just
Yeah.
get it ready. Center yourself, exhale on the downbeat.
The thing about that is when we're on stage and we're taking that time, to us, the time can seem like 20 minutes, that
Yeah.
little time before we start.
Hmm.
And I've seen many solo performers, take a good 10 seconds of just sitting there with their eyes closed, breathing.
I do it every time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not afraid to. Yeah.
Yeah. But the reason I think people, they seem self-conscious about it. I think
Right.
it's one of the reasons that people don't do it.
Because it's like crickets, right? It's like hello.
Right, right. But the audience, as an audience member, I like that. It's like
So do I.
the frame between the ambient noise or what maybe somebody just said about the piece, that frame separating that before the music begins. That's like a buffer zone. And I like
The
that.
the silence is the canvas, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like
Well,
Michael Jackson at the Super Bowl, right?
I should say though, yeah, right. I should say that I consider the silence as the frame. You put a frame around a painting, it separates the wall from the painting.
Right. Yeah. 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 Sure.
Right, and that Michael Jackson thing was, that
Yeah.
was a little long.
How long
Little
was
self, too long.
Yeah.
Easy answer, too long.
It's tough to talk about these things in isolation because they're also related to each other.
Of course,
Yeah.
of course, they're all interlinked.
Yeah. I discovered a sort of practice approach in regards to getting your tempo up to performance. Earlier, like in the last year, Micah and we were doing some duets, and we were doing some Rameau pieces. He's really into the French Baroque composer Jean-Philippe Rameau, and a couple of gigs, which are supposed to be fast, right? And so we go and we read through this one, and he starts, and he's just like burning, and I'm like, whoa, and like I was not ready to play it that fast yet,
Yes.
like I wasn't there yet. He was at 120, I was at maybe 90, and so he's like, no, it's got to be this fast, So I'm like, all right, can do. Just you got to give me some, give me a week, So I what I started doing is like just the various phrases, I would set my metronome to 90, and I'd live there for a practice session, and then the next day I would turn it up 5 BPM, and then I would live there for that practice session, and then the next day I would turn it up to 100.
Okay, I thought you were going to go down and then up, down. And
no,
up.
No, I
switch back.
No, I didn't do any switchbacks. Yeah,
okay.
So it was maybe that would have been good too.
It does work. It can be a helpful process.
Yeah, but I'd never done it quite like that before, where it's like over the course of days. Like I mean, rather than trying to ramp up the tempo within the span of one practice session,
right?
It was like do it at this tempo, then time away, and then come back and do it a little faster. And it's like just being a little bit faster, it doesn't feel like a shock, because it's like it's hardly faster than I was the day before.
Right.
And then after a week of doing this, like 5 BPM faster each day, I was there.
You're at 120.
Yeah. I'd never done it in such a calculated way before. Like that, but it's like now that I've done that, it's like, okay, I think I'm going to start applying this to other things that need to be.
And again, doing rhythmic variations and speed bursts in that is also
within
really
that.
good.
Right, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this actually relates to the next thing, fragment chaining.
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, I was actually applying this to something in yesterday's practice, and when we have a passage that it goes on a series of 16th notes, for example, at a fast tempo, we might know the first 4 or 5 notes, and then it gets a little bit cloudy, sloppy, and then all of a sudden the lights are out, right?
Yeah, right.
So this one scale passage that I was working on, I was actually applying the fragment chaining. So it would be something like this, where I would play the first 4 notes, right? And then I'm going to add just one fragment. I'm going to chain it to that. Now the next note that I'm going to add has a little half bar because of what's coming up. There's a little arpeggio coming up.
Yeah.
So I'm going to add that fragment of the half bar. Right? So now those first 6 16th notes, just by adding the one note at a time, I feel pretty confident at. Now I'm just going to add the next note, which is a G. The next note is a pull-off back to F sharp. And I just keep adding these fragments until I get to the end of the line.
Yeah.
And there's a couple things that this does. It allows us to really edify what we've learned by going back to that first couple or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 notes. And then we can see those clearly. We're playing without anxiety. And because we're only adding one more note, we know we can do that. So we're giving ourselves a chance to succeed.
Yeah.
And that's always a great strategy.
Yes.
Like whenever we're practicing, give yourself a chance to achieve it. And, it doesn't take long. I mean, there are 4 groups of these 6 16th note passages that after a while, you get the whole passage.
Right.
Now, I'm going to actually jump to another tool. I think it's out of order. I'm not looking at the sheet, but it's called backwards practicing.
That's a couple later, but that's fine.
Yeah, I'm going to jump to that because it sort of dovetails, as with many of these do. So if I go to the end of this phrase, the last couple of notes are those 3. The note before that is that. 2 notes before that. 3 notes before that. Let's see where I am here. And what I'm doing now is just adding 1 or 2 or 3 notes before where I started and moving up to the beginning of it. And it's the same idea, but in reverse. Now I know where I'm headed. I know where the end of this phrase is. And and if I go from the beginning to the end, I know the whole pathway.
Yeah.
I know what it's like to just get to the next note, but I also know what it's like to feel like I'm home in that phrase.
Yeah.
And I find that with myself and my students, when we have a long phrase like that, oftentimes it's the end of the phrase that suffers. We don't know the end as well as the beginning.
Right.
And that's why I added this tool right now, because the fragment chaining, we're doing all the repetitions at the beginning. So we're edifying that. But this balances it out by doing more repetitions at the end. Mm-hmm. So we have just as much familiarity with that. Yeah. And one of the other things that you'll find, and I find often, is that we become a little unsure where we are if we start in the middle of 6/16 notes, for example. Like, oh my gosh, I've never started there before. And our tendency then is, I'm going to go back to the beginning of the phrase. But instead, we should say, no, I'm going to figure out how to start from that spot.
Yep.
Because you're taking something out of context of the previous notes and just starting from there. And all of a sudden, you get this little bit of a different angle of light shining on the phrase. And you remember that when you play the whole long phrase, you remember what you did in these little spots of starting or adding or moving forward. And it's like examining something, evidence. You're Sherlock Holmes and you have the magnifying glass and you're looking for clues or whatever for a crime. This is how this works out. You're looking at this phrase in all these different ways. And in this case, 24 notes in a row in this scale passage, and you understand every little nook and cranny of them.
Yeah.
So I find that to be a very helpful tool. And again, it can be a little frustrating at first, but it means that you have room to grow in that because of that.
If the smoke's coming out of your ears, it's working.
Yeah. And and back to backwards practicing, you can also do that like the very last measure, last 2 measures, last 3 measures, last 4 measures. That's also very valuable. That's one I learned from David Russell.
I learned that from David Russell too. Actually.
There you go.
Yeah. I heard him say that in a masterclass. He's I think he said he learns pieces that way. Like he learns
I've heard
the
him
last
say that.
measure first, and then the last 2 measures, and so on. Doesn't mean he plays the music in reverse, but
no. I told a student once, this young lady, she was about 14 at the time. I told her about backwards practicing. I said, "You want to practice this backwards?" And I thought I explained it clearly.
she comes was in playing it in reverse. Yeah.
She made it actually backwards. Last note, she flipped, and she said, "That's so hard." I said, "Yeah, but it's not what I asked you to do."
Yeah. I have a funny story. I have a friend who studied with Elliot Fisk.
Yeah.
And he walked into his office one day, and he's playing just the most insane stuff, just like, what is he doing, And he goes like, what are you playing right now? And he says, Hinastera Sonata. I'm playing it backwards.
Oh, he actually did it in reverse.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now here's another way of playing it backwards.
Very nice. Very good. Yeah. Or
yeah.
We can do like this.
There's another way. Yeah.
Or
this,
right.
There's all those options.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, I mean the fragment chaining though. I mean it's I think that's huge. I don't remember you ever describing it with that terminology before, but I heard it described. Do you know who Noah Kageyama is?
I don't believe I do. I don't think I know the name.
I think he is or was a violin professor at Juilliard. Mm-hmm. But he has this like mailing list podcast thing. I think it's a podcast. It's called The Bulletproof Musician.
Oh, then I know him.
Yeah.
I know of him.
Yeah.
Of him. Yeah. Yes.
So he's talked about this in that on that platform, you know, and he calls it that fragmentation or chaining or fragment chaining, you know, something to that effect. And you know, I've always found like the best place to apply it is when you have some monster scale run or something, you know, like a huge, like this big passage of a lot of fast notes in a row, you know. And you know, you said earlier it's like oftentimes it's the ending that suffers, but like sticking the landing out of those passages is probably the most important thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I do it the same way. You know, I like start at the beginning, one note. Well, okay, not one note. Anyone can play one note, but two notes, three notes, whatever.
Right.
But you know, you do it three notes, maybe like half a dozen times or something, you know, and really, really get comfortable with that. And then, yeah, starting at the end of the passage and working backwards, you know, starting at the ending of the run, because that's the part you got to stick, you know. Even like starting in the middle and building out either way, I think is good, you know.
Changing perspective is really what you're doing.
Yeah. I see this all the time with my students. I know I used to be like this, you know, when I was studying with you, but like I can think you'd say, oh, start from the end of beat 2 and measure 7. And you know, you're looking at the page like you've never played this music before, right?
Yeah.
And it's like I'm going to start from the beginning. Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, no, you know, it's really good to just force yourself to start from these really weird places, like just in the middle of a phrase, you know, and to just pick up the music right there. Like if you can't do that, I mean, that's probably, you know, a chink in the armor, as
right.
Say,
It's indicative of some place where you're just not really cognizant. And I use the analogy of context. For example, if let's say your old high school biology teacher who you really liked and you remember clearly, and you see this person in the grocery store, not in the classroom, in the high school. There's going to be a delay of, you look familiar. Where do I know you from? But if you saw that person in the biology classroom, there would be no delay at all. So it's out of context. And that's what it's like when we're trying to add one note or start at the end or start in the middle of a phrase. It's out of context. And again, you know, if you saw that biology teacher at the grocery store, at the gas station, you know, at the local gym or something, 6, 7 different places, there's going to be a time when you'll never not recognize him or have a delay in recognizing him, right?
Yeah.
Same kind of thing. So as you take all of these passages out of context, and it could be just, again, like we were talking about before, divide and conquer, just the layer of the soprano or the layer of the bass, and isolate it. I was doing that again with some older piece that I'm relearning, and I'm saying, I wrote that bass line? Oh my gosh, you know, like that's pretty cool, you know, because I isolated again, but I'd forgotten about it. So yeah, all of those things are valuable, and they keep us from getting bored. They keep our practicing fresh. And again, if you have this list, which, you know, I was just thinking I could put this on my website, on your website, and people could download the PDF for free. I don't have any patent on this or anything, you know, I give it out freely. Right. Yeah, right. Not even pending. But you know, I'm glad to share this, and I do all the time. So.
Okie dokie. Thanks for watching. Again, you can get a PDF of Jim's tools on his website. Link down in the description. As usual, if you have any thoughts, questions, or experiences you'd like to share related to anything we talked about, please feel free to leave a comment. In the next segment, we'll be talking about tip management and befriending the frets. Thank you. We'll see you in the next one.